Hi, my name is Carmen Quednow, and I've been hired to analyze billboards with the message neighborhood safety. Now, neighborhood safety in the past with this billboard has been identified just in one setting, and what we're trying to do is teach this group of folks that the neighborhood is, and what's safe is in a neighborhood is somewhat defined differently for different people. Now, this particular picture is a city neighborhood. And it is children playing, they're happy faces, the people around are happy. But what makes this different from perhaps a rural or a suburban area is that there's no grass, there's no trees, there is pretty much concrete and buildings, but it still creates a safe neighborhood. It's just a neighborhood that maybe other viewers may not be able to identify with. What's culturally familiar to the viewer that may like this neighborhood, that may feel safe, is someone that has memories of this type of setting, where they are emotionally engaged because of they can relate. They've grew up like this, and this is the neighborhood similar to where they have been as a child, playing basketball on concrete or at their apartment building in the back in a highly populated area. And again, if you look at the folks in this picture, they are happy, they're running. You can almost hear the background of the voices and the happiness, the contentment. The emotional response is definitely a feeling of safety. And that therefore engages the audience. If you look at the basketball, if you look at the bags, you look at some of the things over where they have the area is fenced in, and they have blankets draped over the fence that tells people they're going to be there a while, that they're comfortable, and people are coming and going, and there's several people again, and it just shows that again, it's in this particular setting, it is emotionally engaging to people who can identify with growing up in something like this. And if you look at a different picture, a little bit different setting, this particular picture identifies more and emotionally engages those that have grew up in a neighborhood with parks in it, maybe not as heavily populated. And you can see because of the trees and the forest and the flowers and maybe less people. You don't see any homes. You don't see a lot of concrete. You actually see some grass and a lot of greeneries. And this is maybe for those that can relate and emotionally become engaged because this is how they spent their childhood, and to them this identifies neighborhood safety. So it has a little bit different look to it, but the effect is the same depending on who is emotionally engaged to this type of a billboard. If it has memory for me as the viewer, my emotional response is heightened and I am more engaged. If it ignites my emotional response, my personal experience growing up in the country makes this more engaging for me. I can relate to it. It makes me feel safe. It makes me feel I can bring my children here. It's culturally familiar to me because I've had experiences similar to it. And when we talk about some of the codes that are used to help the viewer understand why they can identify with it, they're semiotic codes. Some of the codes in this particular picture, the metonymic codes, is kind of a collection of the signs that cause me as the viewer to make assumptions about what's being seen here. So I would associate the kids and the running with the toys as a form of happiness. If I look at the kids and the smiling, those together, I associate that with happiness. If I looked at more of a displaced code, I would kind of transfer the meaning from one set of signs to the other. So if I look at just the toys or the slides, the bright colors, the objects, those together kind of tell me that, oh, fun is had here. This looks like a safe environment. It kind of transfers for every culture. So some of the codes are used very nicely here. Back into this picture, some of the codes here are, again, we talked about it before, the fence with the blankets on it. That fence for one person might be somewhat concerning, but for this group of people, they're using it to hang their garments on there. They're going to be there a while. That is kind of displaced coding, and it kind of can cultures from all over can relate to that. It's kind of transferring meaning from one set of signs to another, but it's a meaning of safety. And again, the same metonymic code used here. There's kids, they're smiling, they're running. Those two creates happiness. Some of the stuff on the sidewalk is kind of a condensed code that can kind of form a new sign, so to speak, that it's a basketball court, and it's used very nicely here. So these semiotic codes play a vital role in using the billboard to help customers identify with what's going on as well. So the cognitive element in both are somewhat the same as far as the memories and how that relates to the audience. And I think, again, it's very clear that there are two different neighborhoods, but the message in both are the same. But depending on the viewer who is perceiving that, the needs are very different, and that's clearly shown in these two pictures.